These two on paper came together very quickly. Stick around to the end where I show you a trick on how to make changes without using paint. Okay, let's get started. Hello and welcome. This is Betty with Betty Franks Art, and as always, I am excited to have you here with me and watch me work through this process of working on 24 by 18 inch paper. Now, before I put this paper up on my wall, I put a layer of gesso on it and let that dry. And then I just put tape on the back side of these pieces of paper and taped them up to my painting wall. And my painting wall actually has plastic on it. It is the number 4 mil, M-I-L, plastic. And it's a sturdy plastic, and it'll be up here for years. It's already been up here for almost 2 years. And that's why there's so much paint on it. Okay, so I got started with mark making. My usual way to get started. It's my way to loosen up and get into the motion of painting, and also to obliterate that white paper just staring back at me. Now, the next step I like to do in my process is to add black paint. Now here I'm grabbing black, this is carbon black, straight out of the jar. And lately I've also been mixing my black. So creating a more deeper black by mixing other colors with it just adds a lot more character and interest to the black paint. But in this case, actually this black worked out really well, and I just love the way it looks at the very end of the painting. And the reason I like to put so much black paint down early on is because I don't know where I want that black to be showing through on that final layer. So the more I add now, the more options I'll have later. And honestly, I didn't really put that much. Usually I cover up my page a bit more than this. And if I recall correctly, I think I added more black somewhere in the middle of the process. So I could have added more here, but I didn't, and that's okay. That's the beauty of acrylic paints. You can add more whenever you want. Just let it dry and move on to the next step. All right, so speaking of moving on to the next step, here I've decided to start with my cool colors. I like to either work with cool or warm colors at a time so that I'm not crossing them over and creating mud, unless I really want mud, in which case sometimes that's a good thing. Now there, my brush went right into the wet black paint, so kind of made a mess of my colors. So I'm trying to avoid the black, and that's why you see me kind of skipping around, and I'm hoping that it dries. It is summertime, it's July, and it's warm, so it should dry fairly quickly. But for me, it never seems to dry fast enough. Now just then I also flipped my brush around and I used the back side of it to create some texture into that wet paint. So here I didn't clean my brush, and I'm just dipping into yellow now. I think that's cadmium yellow medium. I like to use Nova Color paints. Been using them for many years now and absolutely love them. Love the colors, the consistency of it. I love that it creates mostly a matte finish when I'm done. Not that that really matters so much, because I do end up putting a varnish on my pieces that kind of creates consistency across all the different types of paints, but just one of those things that I love about it. So I've got links below, and I'll include a link in the first comment below on my favorite art supplies, my favorite Nova Color paints, the ones that I use most often. I'll include that as well. And there'll be a number of other links down below. So again, just getting the first layer down in addition to the black. And I did speed up the video at twice the speed, but I'm a pretty fast painter as it is, so it may seem like it's going a lot faster. And especially these early stages, I don't like to think too much, and I love when my brush falls apart and it ends up on the floor. I just put that back together and continued. So as I was saying, this early process I love because it's a lot less thinking and a lot more just doing, putting down marks. And like I talk about in my workshops and on my in my online workshop that I have available, this stage is all about putting down as many marks as you can so that I have so much more to pick from later on when I start covering up areas. And that's why I put marks over marks over marks. So here I'm going to hit it with the dryer, and I did speed this up quite a bit so that you don't have to watch paint dry. And that's just so that the black was completely dry so I can move on. And I'm using a relatively larger brush. This is kind of like a mop brush. That's not the right term for it. Um, I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's fairly large bristles on it. And I really like it for making larger marks. I like to use a variety of different brushes as I go through my process because it just adds more interest when I've got different sizes of marks on my art piece. So here I decided, well, I did dry that other layer, so why not come in with some mark making again? And I'm switching to my non-dominant hand, which is my left hand, in addition to using my right hand. These here are Inktense pencils, which I love because they bleed a bit when you put something wet over them, whether that's water or it's paint. They bleed a bit and they move around, and I really love that. You know, there's some marks I like it when they stay in place, but for the most part, I love marks that move around that I don't have a lot of control over. And to me, that's just more interesting and exciting and part of the fun of creating. So already coming back through and putting marks over marks and still sticking with my cool colors right now. I love building up layers. I'm all about the layers, and you'll see, you know, I'll put blues over greens, and later you'll see I'll be introducing warm colors, and there'll be one warm color over another warm color. And again, to me, that just is adding more texture and interest by building up those layers. Now, I have to say, I think this is like one of my first videos where I'm working on paper. Um, I may have one way back, like many years ago, and it wasn't even a full video. I think it was just me showing you somewhere in the middle stages of my process. So it's exciting that I finally have these two 24 by 18s that I can show you. And I like working, if I can, I like working in multiples. It gives me an opportunity to bounce back and forth between the two. If I'm getting stuck on one, I'm not sure where to go, I like to work on the other one. For the most part, I will work on both of them at the same time. So like here, you know, I added yellow to one and then I moved over to the one on the left and continued with that same brush adding yellow. And this way, the two pieces can work together, so they can be sold together or they can be sold separately. So I look at, you know, trying to have one feel like it belongs with the other, but yet the two can stand alone as well. So still sticking with that yellow, and yellow works for both the cool colors and the warm colors. That's what I love about yellow. If you're on Instagram or Facebook or even Pinterest, you can find me in all those places. I especially like to hang out on Instagram. I think it's just a lot of fun to be there. There's so many things that you can do there in addition to posting. I like doing the videos, IGTV, which is, you know, longer videos, short videos, which are the reels, and posting to stories too. So you kind of learn a little bit more about me and my life in stories. I post things that I'm doing that are both art related and not art related. Now, I mentioned I've got a recorded workshop. It is on my website. I'll include a link down below. If you're interested in that, you can check that out. It's 2 hours from a live session that I did, and walks you through my entire process from start to end. In addition to, I talk about color harmony, and I do a little exercise in color harmony and talk about shapes and a little bit about composition as well. So here's the example where I decided to not only do drips, because I love drips, but I came back in with black again. I felt like, oh, I just didn't have enough, and I covered up quite a bit of it. So coming back in with black again. And this is still early on in the process. I'm not worried about it being the final layer. What I don't like is coming to that final layer and then adding black, because then it tends to kind of float on top. And I like the way black creates depth, and it's hard to make it look like it's creating depth when it's floating up on top of everything else. Now I forgot to speed up this part. I missed this part where I'm drying it. So you get to watch me dry and watch the paint dry. If you've been following my art for a while, then you know my inspiration comes from my love for fields of flowers and flowers in general. And that is what I create when I am creating. Now, am I thinking about flowers when I'm creating? Yes and no. So what I'm thinking about is, well, just, yes, I am thinking about my love for flowers, and probably more so how I feel about flowers, how happy they make me, and I'm trying to convey that happiness into my paintings. So I guess what I'm trying to say, and I'm stumbling across my words, is that I'm not painting pictures of a flower, but more of my way of thinking about flowers in an abstract way, but also the joy I feel about flowers. So here I'm coming in with red, and I like red straight out of the jar because it's a great red. It's a cadmium red, and I find that when I mix it with other colors, it just doesn't produce that beautiful red that I like. And I'm also using a flat brush. Oh, what is this called? There's a name for it, and I will think of it. But it's basically kind of like a spatula, but it's a bit stiffer than a spatula. So adding some warm colors now, and I think I'm on my palette over there. I'm working on getting some more warm colors ready. We've got a pink color going on here. It's like the name of that tool is at the tip of my tongue, and I can't think of it right now. And if I don't think of it during this recording, I will look it up and I'll put it in the notes below. Or if you can think of it, if you know the official name for it, please leave a comment down below. Help out everybody else who's probably wondering what it is as well. Love to know if you have tried Nova Color paints. And if you have, do you like them? Do you enjoy using them? Leave me a comment down below and share your thoughts about it. As I mentioned, I really do love them. I love these colors. This one I think is organic orange, and I mixed it with, I think, whatever was left on my brush there. So some of the pink. And I really like mixing my colors. Now, I've switched over to these little bowls, plastic bowls, because I've got cool colors on my palette on my table, and they're wet, and I didn't want to deal with drying them. So instead, I've got a bunch of these plastic, it's either old Tupperware or like yogurt jars or yogurt containers, things like that I saved where I can mix colors. And this brush here, I love these long handles, and I'm guessing that's kind of like a size 10 round, I believe is what that one is. Again, using a variety of different brushes. back to the pink. I really love pink. It's just one of those happy colors, especially next to that teal. I love teal as well. Adding some more drips there. If you're enjoying this video, I'd love it if you could give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, click the subscribe button and then click the bell. YouTube makes you do two things. One, subscribe so that you can see my videos come up in your feed on a regular basis, but also if you hit the bell, you'll be notified when I have a new video, and that way you'll be one of the first to watch it. And subscribing is easy. There is a round circle in the lower right that says Betty Frank's Art. It's my logo in a teal. If you just hover above that, then you'll see that you can subscribe there, or go right below this video to subscribe. All right, still trying to think of the name of this tool and I can't think of it. But it sure does come in handy, and I have it in a couple of different sizes. So sometimes I like doing a variety of not only using my brush, but coming back in with either this tool or with a spatula, or even with a palette knife. Just adds a different type of mark to the paper, and to me that just again adds more interest. Here I'm already thinking about values. I came in with a lot of white, which now mixed with some of the red, which created a pink. Values I tend to think about closer to the end. And here I'd say we're maybe a third of the way in. And scratching right into that white, and then kind of pushing it back a bit so that it's not all these perfectly round circles. Now my back is not hurting, even though I keep my hand there. It's just one of those things where I don't know what to do with that hand sometimes, so it just goes right onto my hip. And it makes it look like my back is hurting, but it isn't. It's fine. Although I do have back issues, but I do exercises to eliminate, painful back issues. And sometimes if I don't do my exercises, then my back does start to hurt. But working upright like this is good for my back. It's the, hunching over. If I was to take these papers and work on a desk, my back would be killing me, because then I'd be hunched over constantly. So I really like taping them up on my wall like this. Coming back in with some of that orange. Now it's a little hard for you to see what I'm doing over on the side where my table is, because these are smaller pieces, I set the video camera so that it's a bit closer and you can see a little bit more instead of having it from a distance. So I love working on paper. I would say if you ask me what my most favorite is between paper, canvas, and wood, paper definitely comes in first, and then wood, and then canvas. And the reason paper first is because to me it was a psychological thing where I just had a hard time working on canvas early on because, well, it's canvas and I paid a lot of money for it and it's so precious. I have to be so careful. But with paper, it was just so inexpensive to buy, even the good paper. Not the really, really good paper, but quality paper. This is mixed media paper, by the way, and I don't think I mentioned that at the beginning. So mixed media paper, very affordable. You buy these in the pads, and I think there's like 20 of them to a pad, and for $10, $15, you've got a lot of paper. And psychologically, it was just, for me, it was like, oh, it's just paper, so not a big deal, and if I mess it up, no big deal. So it allowed me to have so much more freedom to create and not worry about what the outcome would be. And so I learned that early on that paper was the best option for me. And really, it took me a while to get really comfortable on canvas because, or even wood panel, because again, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about how much money I spent on it and that I want to create something that's, that's worthwhile and worthy. So that's why I love paper. And so the next one that I absolutely love is wood because it has a hard surface like paper. And lately, if you've missed some of those videos, you can just go to my homepage and scroll down a little bit, and I've got different categories. And you'll see one that's called Small Art, and you'll find some of my pieces on wood that I do there. And I love that. Okay, so here's an example of a spatula where I'm spreading paint. So anyway, love working on wood, especially the 2-inch deep sides. It's like creating a painting on the sides in addition to the front. So it's like 5 different paintings in one. And then canvas, I love canvas, especially the really large canvas. It's different to work on because it bounces back at you. It's got, it's very lumpy and bumpy because you're working on fabric. But, once I get into the groove of that, it works out really well. So here I'm looking at, different size elements. I'm thinking about my composition a bit. I'm thinking about where my colors are. And here I'm doing a mix of, it's not monochromatic, I'm not working just with one type of or family of colors. And I've done a few paintings like that, which I really enjoy also. But here I've mixed my warms and my cools, so I'm trying to balance them out. Now, most likely I am kind of stepping away and looking at it, which you can't see me since I'm off camera, but stepping back and looking at the two pieces, both so that they work together as one and also individually. Going back to talking about paper versus wood versus canvas, let me know in the comments below which one you prefer the most and tell me why. I always love hearing the reason why somebody likes to work with a specific type of medium, not medium, but substrate. And when you leave comments below, other folks like to read those as well. So you kind of share information with all of your fellow artist friends here on YouTube. So being a bit bold and adding a larger element there. And I don't always like it when it's a perfect circle sitting on top of everything. And that's why you saw me go in there with a rag and kind of push back some of those, the line around the circle. So it looks like maybe it's, partially underneath, partially on top. As opposed to the one on the left, that top circle is definitely floating on top. And I end up pushing that back a bit later. So this brush here is a rigger. Love my rigger. I use this rigger for my smallest paintings, which are 5x7s, 5x7 inches, to my larger ones, the 60x60. It works for everything, and I love it because it makes very fine lines. And a rigger is like a script brush. It's got very long bristles on it, and it works best if you dunk it in some water so that the paint can move around very easily. It's one of those, if you ask me what my absolutely must-have brush is, it would be a rigger for sure. Now, I know some folks love to use sponge brushes, and Lord knows I've got a whole bunch of those in my inventory, but I'm not big on sponge brushes. I've worked with them before, I've used them before, and now that I mention it, it's been a long time since I've used them, so maybe I should, come back again and give them a try. It's going to give, I talk a lot about adding variety to your painting. It's going to be more interesting when you add variety. And another way of doing that is as I talked about before, not just using brushes, but using other tools. I can see I was bouncing my brush up and down, which is usually my indicator of, where do I go next? What do I do now? So I've got an AirPod in my other ear. I usually just wear one at a time. And it's in my right ear. And I know this because I'm always listening to a book, an audiobook, or a podcast when I'm creating. I just find that I do my best creating when I'm listening to the spoken word as opposed to listening to music. And the reason for that is because when I'm listening to words, it doesn't allow my brain to be so judgmental about what I'm doing. And so it really gives me that extra bit of freedom to create as I want to create and not having that negative self-talk, which still sneaks in. And I'm sure that you could probably relate to it too, because I think a lot of us have that. You know, the whole, oh, why'd you put that color there? And what are you doing? And I have no clue what I'm doing. Um, you know, all that kind of stuff affects your ability to create. And so that's why I love listening to podcasts or audiobooks where I just get so engrossed in what is being said that I don't have time to listen to my judging mind. So if you haven't tried that yet, give it a try and then come back and let me know what you think and if it's helpful to you. I know it doesn't work for everybody, and there is no one way of doing anything. You just try different things and figure out what works best for you. Now I'm back to using my rigger, but I'm actually using it to paint with as opposed to make marks with. Sometimes I'll do that. I like doing that because it kind of skips over areas and just creates interest in the sense that a little bit of what was underneath will show through. So again, here I've added marks, but I'm coming back through to lighten them and obliterate those circles so that they're not perfectly filled in and they're not floating on top. I really like going over marks that I already had and adding yet another color to them. So at this point, we're a bit more than halfway done. I'm really loving these colors. These two, by the way, have sold, and these two, along with one that I created when I did my New York workshop in July, the three of them have gone to Germany, to Anne-Marie in Germany. So super grateful that she fell in love with all of these and that they are hanging out in Germany now. So that pink I just used, I think that was my fluorescent pink, which is such a bright, vibrant pink and just adds this wonderful pop of color. So coming right back over, sometimes I'll go over the same area with the same color if I really like the way that color is looking there, and just making it a bit more opaque and intensify the color a bit more. And I think I had put orange there and came back in with yellow. And the reason I did that is I'm trying to balance the colors now. And so if I don't feel like that color is working, then I just come back in with yet another color. These two I ended up calling compulsive kindness. And it was just, I don't know where, I can't remember where maybe I heard those words or I saw it printed somewhere, but I just loved it because I just love when people are kind to other people and do things out of the kindness of their heart, not that they need to do it, not that they were required to do it, and that just always brings me so much joy. I also have a note pinned in front of me right now that I'm looking at, and it says, "Do good recklessly." And that's just another one of those sayings that I really love. So, compulsive kindness 1 and 2. Coming in with lighter values. So I've got white on my brush and whatever other color I had on there. So it's not always a pure white. Often it has just a tinge of a little bit of color, or I should say a tint of color, because color plus white is a tint. And then color plus black is a shade. I'm definitely slowing down here and spending more time observing and deciding. As I can see, I'm thinking there with that brush hanging there, trying to decide where to go next. I think we're getting pretty close to, oh, here we go. You know, I did some splatters off camera, and now I've come back in to show you how I did the splatters, and I'm adding more. I think it was one of those things where I sat down in my chair and looked at it and said, oh, I think I should do some splatters. And there were a bit too many splatters. So splatters, as you know, or if you don't know, they usually have a lot of water to them so that they can, fly off the brush easily. And because they're very wet, I can just take my rag and go in there and take out the ones that I don't want. So I did that on both sides, or both pieces, I should say. So some I left, some of them I just took out. And put on my glasses so I can really see what I'm doing there. Okay, so I've slowed down the camera here, or the video, and what I did was I took pictures, and here I'm pointing to what I don't like, that circle right there. My eye kept going there and I didn't like that. That's my thumbs down. I didn't like that, so I am going to address that. So taking a photo of my artwork is something that I like to do towards the end. I also like to turn it into a black and white painting. In this case, I didn't at this point. And what I did here was I just took my fingers and I kind of obliterated that bottom portion of the circle, and then I added some marks in that top portion. So that kind of pushed the circle back and not made it stick out so much and made it so obvious. Now here I'm going to show you how I use Picsart. So I'm going to get up close here. So Picsart is a app that I like to use, and I'm going to bring in that photo, the one that I just took after I made some adjustments, and then I'm going to put a border on it. So there's a border there, and then I click on the white border and hit OK. And what this does is it allows me to truly see that artwork without all of that noise around it. And the white just really, I could do it without a white border, but I prefer the white border because it really helps pop that more so. Okay, so here's how it was before. See that circle up there? So I'm much happier with that now. And now we're going to continue on. Okay, so now what I've got is that bottom section. I don't like that bottom section. So what I'm doing is I brought this into just my regular, where I view my photos. I have these very basic tools to edit it. And what I'm doing is I'm picking a color that I already have in there, and I am just using my finger to add some color to that area down there to decide, is that what I want to do? Because I felt like that orange was like in your face, that pink and orange. So I'm going to come back in and add some blue and maybe a darker blue-green color next to that. So that's my plan for that one on the right. So I've got my phthalo turquoise jar that you could see coming into the screen. There we go. So I'm just actually pulling it straight out of the jar this time and adding that color there, kind of like what I did on my phone. And at the beginning of this video, I talked about, a trick that you can do without using paint to make adjustments to your painting. So that's one of those tricks that I do on a regular basis. Take a photo and then make adjustments on my phone before I actually do it, so that I can decide, well, does that make sense or does it not make sense? So here I'm speeding up a little bit, but I slowed down again because as I'm drawing, I am multitasking and I'm adding colors. I'm painting as I'm drawing so that I can get this done quickly. I think it'd be good for me to have an assistant that stands there with a hairdryer on a regular basis, or find a way to set up a hairdryer, because I really like moving quickly through my paintings. All right, so I grabbed a smaller brush here. I'm adding some circles. So even though I covered up this area, I didn't want it to just, kind of be very plain that way, because if you look at the left side of that painting, that big blue area, that area is very plain and simple. So I didn't want another area down low like that to be overly plain and simple, if that makes sense. So I'm adding some kind of tone-on-tone marks and different colors that are very similar, just to add some interest there. And I think I actually come back in with yet a different color also, not a tone-on-tone, to add some interest. Oh, here's some circles. Can't really tell from where I'm sitting and looking at the screen. I think it was a kind of a pinkish color, I want to say, or maybe orange. And well, while I've got the rigger, let's go add some more colors, some more marks. All right, so back to the camera. I'm going to take a photo of it, and then I'm going to show you all of the photos. So the before, and then the mock-up that I did, and the after. All right, so I'm coming back into that Picsart, and I'm going to put a white border around it one more time so that you can see the final one. All right, so I save that. And okay, so that's my mock-up piece. And I'm doing a save as so that you can see. Okay, so that's what it looked like before, and that's mocked up, and then that's the piece, that's the actual piece where I put paint on there. So again, a great tool. If you're not doing this already, I'd suggest that you give it a try if you feel stuck and you're not liking something and you don't want to actually get paint. You don't want to get the paint out and put the paint on there. You want to kind of get a feel for what it might look like. So it got a thumbs up, and calling it done. And so this last portion here is my final mark making. And this mark making is much more intentional, as opposed to the beginning, the middle stages where I was kind of like just scribbling it on. I like to do this where I've got marks that are just kind of, I like to call the icing on the cake. It doesn't make a huge change to the overall piece, but it enhances it. And especially when you're looking at it from a distance, I'd like folks to be able to look at my art from a distance and enjoy it, and then be pulled in, and when they get up close, for them to be able to see more interesting things happening. So that piece on the left there, that circle that is still that teal one, tealish blue, that's still standing out quite a bit. Up close, and you'll see pictures later, there's some greenish marks, circles over it. So it did push it back a bit, but not not a ton. So here I'm scribbling, and yes, there are some scribbles. It's not everywhere. It's intentional again. I'm thinking about where I want those kinds of scribbles. And then I'd like to come in and just erase them a little bit too, so that they're not a perfect, consistent line going everywhere. It kind of breaks it up a bit. Here I'm doing, besides scribbles, I've got circles going on. I've got lines that are horizontal and vertical. Again, a variety of different things. I'm using colored pencils, like Prismacolor pencils. Again, you'll find it in my favorite art supplies. I like using the Neocolor 2 crayons that are water soluble. The Neocolor 1 are not. So if you like your final marks not to move around at all, you can certainly use Neocolor 1. But really at this stage, this will get varnished. So there will be a spray varnish, and I'm going to try to remember to add a link up above here so that you can look at my video, watch my video on how I like to varnish my art on paper. And I use that same process for my art on wood or canvas. Same process across all three different types. Now in the video, I'm going to mention real quick, in the video I'm using a spray varnish to secure my marks. Lately these days I've been using a fixative spray, and you can find that in my favorite art supplies. So either one works. You know, pick and choose, you know, what you'd like to do. And then after okay, so here, I'm going to interrupt that thought. There I made some circles around those greens and I didn't like it, so I just erased it. And I'm not sure if I was using a Prismacolor pencil or a crayon, but it doesn't matter. I can erase crayon marks as well. So don't be fearful about making marks, you know, anywhere, and because you can erase them if you're really not happy with them. Okay, going back to the video that I have on how to varnish your art. After I do the spray, then I like to put down 2 coats of varnish on these larger pieces. If the piece is like a 5x7, I can usually get a good layer of varnish on it with just 1 layer. But these larger pieces, I definitely like to have 2 layers. Okay, so here I have signed them both, and there's my thumbs up that I am done. So I'm going to give you some close-up shots video, and then I also have still pictures for you to see up close. And here you can definitely see a lot more of my mark making that you weren't able to see from a distance. And again, I'm just in love with these 2 pieces. So happy that they found a new home very quickly. I'm missing them, to be honest. So it's kind of good looking at this video and watching my process again. I would love to make a couple more like this. And I think what really stood out for me in this one was the amount of black that I had in it. Sometimes I end up covering up too much black. So like, for example, here along that right side, there's a lot of black. I can see black drips poking through. I think the black really just the values of having the black and the white and all of these colors, the warms and the cools, I just love the way that they work together in this piece. Now I'm putting my hand there because it's hard for me to see where the edge is. So I was showing you my painting wall while I was trying to actually show you the painting. So there they are. In love with them both. And as always, I like to show you a quick peek of my studio. So there's my palette that had the cool colors on it. And my rack of all kinds of supplies. Got photos or artwork in the back. Now these 2 are 36 by 36. They are now finally finished and varnished. Those 3 down there are the smaller ones. I ended up mounting on wood, and I love the way they look. Those 3 larger ones are available. Those are on paper. Here's a view of the rest of my studio, my door over there, my painting wall. All right, and so here's Compulsive Kindness 1, and here's number 2. And then I'm going to show you a whole bunch of close-up pictures. Oh, and here I am holding the two. Happy that they are done. And here are the close-up pictures. You know what I love about these cropped close-ups is really just about any one of these would be a great starting point for another painting. So sometimes I will take a cropped piece and use it as kind of an inspiration to create a piece like this one right here. That would be a great piece right there. So taking that and using that to inspire me to create another piece. All right, here are the two matted and framed in a room so that you can see what that looks like. All right, folks, thank you again for being here. You can subscribe here, and if you want to watch more videos, check them out from here. And I'm wishing you a super fabulous and creative day.